We all want to be there when our children are just born, and we want to be there to see them walk and take their first step and all those things. I get it because I was. But it is important on a whole other level when you have twins and teens because the stakes are higher. The stakes are higher. If you miss the first steps, you feel badly about that. But if you miss some of this really important teen information or ability to like lend a helping hand for some of these, more dramatic scenarios or academics, whatever it is, those can impact long term. So stakes are just higher.
Yeah, I read there was another one and I don't remember the term, but it was something like plant parent. And it was saying like teens really want parents to be there. They just don't necessarily want you to like be sitting next to them. It's like that idea of like they like having somebody in the house because they know somebody's there.
Hello and welcome to the And Both podcast. Here we are going to hear from moms and those in motherhood that are doing the thing that works for them. They are honoring themselves alongside the all-encompassing role and level of expectation that is motherhood. And we are going to hear from as many different people as possible in their own experience. So you can find people to relate to. You can hear stories that will make you laugh, make you cry, all of the above, and that we will come together as a community to support one another in a way that is holistic and honoring of the woman and the mother as a whole. Hello, and welcome back to the And Both podcast. I am here this week with Penny Goffman. She is from Hey Mama. I'm going to have her tell you all about it, but welcome, Penny, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I am head of community at Hey Mama. I've been there for a few years now, and I'm just really excited to be here today on the podcast.
That's awesome. I think I joined Hey Mama in January, I believe. It was either January or December. And since joining, I have been very warmly welcomed by you specifically, but other members of the community. So when you agreed to come on and talk, I was like, oh, please, because I have wanted to sort of hear more of your story since the beginning.
Awesome.
Yeah. So head of community, and what does that entail? So what does that look like for you?
Okay, perfect. I'll rewind. I didn't want to take over and just start going off on that, but I'm glad that you asked. So let me rewind and also just tell everyone who's listening what Hey Mama is in a nutshell before I even talk about my particular role. Hey Mama is a private membership community for working moms, and most specifically moms in business, moms building any sort of brand, moms building any sort of business, from CEOs, founders, and also just, consultants, coaches, you name it, podcasters, authors. The beauty, I think, and Ashley, you'll totally relate to this, is that no longer are we just one thing, right? It's like back in the day, if you were a journalist, you were a journalist, and that was it. It's not like that anymore. You can be a journalist and also be a speaker and also be a podcaster and also be, a writer and have penned a book as an author. So at Hey Mama, we're a community where we kind of help put all of that together. And specifically as head of community, my role is personally, I think, the best one there because I get to connect all of the members. I get to make sure that our community of amazing mamas, of thousands of members, feel like they are heard, feel like they are making the right relationships, building those relationships, networking, connecting with others, getting the resources they need, being amplified, helping to get them PR, host member meetups, all of the above. And that is my lucky job.
Yeah, it's a very cool spot. And I will say, I'm one of those people that I am forever the skeptic. And I came to Hey Mama via another member who was like, no, you have to come in here because, forever and ever, I was a part of groups that were talking about building businesses and things like that. But there is that layer of people not understanding that I don't have a 9-to-5, and I haven't had a 9-to-5 life for a decade plus now. And so having people that understand that like sometimes you have to move something at the last minute because you've got to go pick up one of your kids from school, or sometimes you're trying to figure out how to write some application for something, or you're trying to launch a podcast or whatever you're doing, but that you're the same person who's just trying to do all of these things sometimes at the same time. Don't recommend, but such is life. And that there is a space where people are like, oh, me too, in a way that is not me too. And I'm also like running a marathon and doing this, and this. Like it's a non-competitive, very supportive space to be in. So I love it so far.
Absolutely. And to piggyback off of what you just said, Ashley, I always liken it to an octopus, but probably more than 8 tentacles,
Yeah.
because none of us are just doing one thing, as I said, and that goes above and beyond. Working moms in this day and age, unless those who are very strictly corporate and, and very 9 to 5, especially the members at Hey Mama, members like you and myself included, we have so many different tentacles that we are reaching into and digging into. And to be around, like-minded women that includes that motherhood element is very unique. And it's also hard to find. And having that flexibility is really important. We definitely saw from the community side that, after 2020, there were so many mothers who pivoted. I can't tell you the amount of mothers who, from corporate and lockdown March 2020, came out of that saying 9 to 5 is not working for my home life anymore. And I didn't even realize it. And now I have. And,
Sure.
just that juggle, being there for their children, being able to be there, more at pickup or those after school hours, while also building and growing something that's spectacular and meaningful to them. All of that is combined.
Yeah, I had another woman on here who helps women with career pivots, and it's kind of along that same line of like, I know how to do all these things. I have all these skills. Why am I a part of this system when I have this experience and I have this skill set that I can go out and do this on my own. And I mean, that's a risk. It's not like that's like a super simple thing to do, but I feel like when everyone's kind of proverbial and literal back was up against the wall when it came to the pandemic, people were like, well, I guess no time like the present, right? Like no, there's no good choice, so you're just making the best of the worst choice. Or it gives you an opportunity to say, you know what, I really wanted to do that for a long time. Right now, things are like kind of nuts. So why not jump now? Like, if not now, then when am I going to do this?
There's always a silver lining that comes out of tragedy or crisis. And what you just said, a key word that you just said was opportunity. There was and always is opportunity, even in those down moments. And I think a lot of mothers saw that opportunity of, wow, I don't have to work in an office and potentially commute 9 to 5, 5 days a week to be productive or to be happy or to provide or to be fulfilled. And there's other ways, and I'm going to take advantage of those opportunities and, just take the leap that I've been wanting to take.
Yeah. And so how did you come to Hey Mama?
Yeah. So actually, I joined in January of 2018 as a member, just like you, Ashley. That's just like you joined. I joined as a member at the time. I owned a company called Jolie Boutique, which was named after my daughter Jolie. And it was a omni-channel fashion brand, retail. And basically, I joined to reap all the benefits that you are here for. And I was really engaged. So it was the fall of 2019 where Hey Mama approached me for a contractor role because I was really active and they had a lot of in-person events as well. And I joined as a contractor to kind of build my local community. And then I sold my fashion business in December of 2020, which was the sale of a first business for me. So that was such an interesting process and really quite incredible. And when I knew that I was going to be selling it, I went to headquarters and I went to Emer Kibler, the co-founder, and basically said, I'm technically up for hire if you'd like. And they were like, come on board. And a month later, a month after I signed on the official sale of my business, I joined Hey Mama HQ, and it has been the loving relationship ever since. I just am so grateful that the opportunity came to me, and I really, really love my work because connecting with moms, connecting with working moms, connecting with moms who are building something is just quite an incredible position to be in.
Yeah, I think that is really cool. And so how old are your kids? Because they're on the older side of childhood, right? They're
Totally.
teenagers?
Yes, I was having this conversation. I went to this just event for fun like a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to a mom, and I knew she had little kids, like a 6 month old, a toddler. And I'm like, oh yeah, my kids are old. And then I was like, wait, no, they're not old. Wait, like I'm really like aging myself. They're not old. I'm not an empty nester. They're not like
Right?
married with children. But it's so funny the way you just said it, because it felt that way to me when
Mhm.
so, when you're around a group whose children are more in the toddler phase or early elementary. Yes. So I
Yeah.
have a son and a daughter. My daughter is in ninth grade in high school, and in a month, she's going to be 15. And my son is in sixth grade in middle school, and in 3 weeks, he's going to be 12. So I had that kind of tween as well as a full-fledged teenager and middle school, high school. It's a completely different chapter and different journey than those early years, but I just love it. I really do. I
Yeah.
love it.
I was just reading this article, I actually think it was yesterday, about there's a new push for people taking, I think it was called Teenternity, some teen in there, but parents taking a parent leave when their kids are teenagers, or like downshifting their schedule because the amount of like hands-on that parents of kids that are in that like early high school age are feeling like kids really need, because of so many things that are going on, right? Like with social media, and with all of the driving to sports, and all of the kind of the activities that really ramp up in that part of life. So I was actually thinking about you because I was going to talk to you today, and thinking like having that transition from having your brand and now having kids that are a little bit older, where you have this more, I hate the word flexible because I feel like it has this like not not like important, but just, you know what I mean? Like it has this connotation of like laissez-faire, like, oh, sure, whatever. But that it gives you the opportunity to maybe move things around a little bit more and finagle a little bit better to like maybe match that. So I don't know. I don't know if you found that, having kids that are on the older side of being kids.
Absolutely. I could
Mm.
talk about this for a while, which I won't. But first of all, I have never heard the term Teenternity. So that is so cool. And I'm gonna take to Google right after this, or maybe to Hey Mama Connect, which is the private member platform, and bring up this term. I'm going to be doing that, Ashley.
I will.
Wow, I
I'll
wrote
send
it
you the
down.
article.
Teenternity. Okay, so let me just say, I had the ability, and I'm so grateful that I took 5 years off work when my eldest was born. So I went back to work when she was 5, and that would mean that my youngest was 2, but he had just started into preschool, and I, had a flexible job, so I was still around. But I'm going to say something about these tween teen years. Those after school hours are so critical. And look, I'm in a position where, I work virtually. We're Hey Mama, we're all around the country. So and we're all not all, but most of us are moms. So we get that, how important those hours are. And we know like, we're going to try not to schedule meetings after 3, guys, that type of thing. But so
Yeah.
let me just say, for everyone who's listening, that if you have the opportunity, and we don't all have it, being around after school, being around after 3 o'clock when your children are in middle school and high school is really, really, I know it's a luxury, but important if you're able to, because it's exactly what you said, and then some. That's where you get the nitty gritty. That's where, when your child feels like it at the most random of times, recently for me, literally, I was taking my son to a pediatrician, and all of a sudden, after the nurse leaves, while we're waiting in the room, he's on sitting on the table and we're waiting in the room for the doctor to come in. He's like spilling the beans on all sorts of things that were so random that I was so happy to hear about, like all the secrets, but it's happened in the most random of times in those after school hours. And being around for that, being around to give the support. It's not outward support. It's kind of like secret support. Like they don't really know you're supporting them. During those times, hearing about the homework, like what tests are coming up, helping your child to organize with those executive functioning skills. What's the drama or non-drama? What are the wins? What were the challenges today? And sometimes the challenge is like, I had a really crappy lunch and it put me in a really bad mood. But you know what? Being there to hear that and be like, oh, that sucked. Like maybe tomorrow you'll buy something else or we'll make something else. Being there to validate those moments. Yes, we are a big sports family. So when you mentioned that, the driving is real. The list to from the snacks. Like, when you have tweens and teens, they want a mini dinner after school, and being there to help with that in a healthy way. There are so many elements to those after school hours. So I think a Teenternity is like just this novel and incredible idea. And I think, look, I think employers of small businesses, large businesses also get it. Like I was just looking at, a friend of mine was asking me about a job posting if I knew anyone and it's a big company I won't mention, but a big company, and they're virtual all around the country and they employ a lot of moms. So just having that understanding that, after 3:00, if you have tweens and teens, those are really important. And I'm also going to go as far as to say that, of course, we all want to be there when our children are just born and we want to be there to see them walk and take their first step and all those things. I get it because I was, but it is important on a whole other level when you have tweens and teens because the stakes are higher. The stakes are higher. If you miss the first steps, you feel badly about that. But if you miss some of this really important teen information or ability to like lend a helping hand for some of these, more dramatic scenarios or academics, whatever it is, those can impact long term. So stakes are just higher.
Yeah, I read there was another one and I don't remember the term, but it was something like plant parent. And it was saying like teens really want parents to be there. They just don't necessarily want you to like be sitting next to them. It's like that idea of like they like having somebody in the house because they know somebody's there. And they do like what you're describing your son did. It's like they will come and find you and like, share and do all of that, but knowing that like somebody is there. And I mean, truly, it all like that stuff is all, I think all that stuff is really important. And it may be that like that doesn't happen at 3, it could be that happens at 5, but like having that ability to like turn off whatever you're working on and then just sort of like checking out of that for a little bit is also a different way to do it. There's a thing I think it was in the Netherlands, they were talking about how it's like it's common for people to, it's not the Netherlands, but it's common for people to like they take those after school hours and they're like not available, or they have flex hours. And then after the kids go to bed, it's like you can pick up those 2 hours to like make the day. And that's like totally normal and acceptable in whatever country that's in. And I think it's maybe Denmark. It's somewhere over there. And I thought that was so interesting because it's like a way of being able to sort of do the and both, but in a way that works for the parent. It's a way that works for the child, but it's also a way that works for the employer and them having the understanding that like this person has things that exist outside of like whatever their role is here. And let's have a little bit of flexibility for this time of day to not schedule those meetings, to not have those calls, to not, stack it all in there.
Absolutely. Which is really putting productivity above, rigidity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, that's one of those things that like hopefully will stick around for a while. Hopefully that change and that flexibility, everyone's got the like cat that walks across the keyboard on Zoom or the kid that's like, walking into the middle of your meeting. Like we all have those stories from COVID. And so hopefully there's a little bit of that kind of lingers around as like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, let's try and pretend that we don't have other people that live in our home while we're working.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think too, it's really interesting because a lot of times like the focus is so much, especially when your kids are really young, and the idea is like, it's that physical need, right? Like I have to feed this child and I have to change this child and make sure they sleep and they don't fall down and they do, they don't get hurt and all of that stuff. And so there is that like, oh, my kids are now in school kind of on ramp where it's like, and now they are in school. But really, the focus is coming back to like, as they're getting ready to launch out, there's an opportunity here to like connect and to grow and deepen that bond right before they start to peter out.
Absolutely. And I think what you mentioned, just kind of being around, and that means physically, just physically being around when they are around is really important because as you said, and I mean, I'm gonna plug two people that have nothing to do with your Hey Mama, but Dr. Becky Kennedy and Lisa Damour. Dr. Becky Kennedy also talks a lot about younger children, but Lisa Damour is like all about tweens and teens. And they both said, you mentioned it, our tweens and teens, they do want us around. They do like us. Just physically being present means a lot to them. It means that you're available in the strangest of times sometimes when random things come up, but you're available. So that has been key for me as a mom to, children in this chapter.
Yeah. And so outside of, I mean, that's a huge role, right? Like motherhood is a juggernaut situation all on its own. So, hey mama, motherhood. What do you do? What do you do for you? That's just for you.
So I do a lot for me. This is a topic, sometimes I feel like when I talk about it, maybe I'm controversial in what I say. I don't want to diminish anyone else's journey because I'm only referring to mine. So I always just say that I understand, first of all, that I feel grateful that I have flexibility and all the things that we just spoke about. I understand that not everyone has that, but I have always taken care of myself and prioritized myself always. I almost think I have those first like conscious kind of memories of knowing this in my 20s before having children. And I think when you are like that before children, I don't think you all of a sudden just switch it off when you have children because it's really a part of who you are. That's my journey. So I don't, whether it's on my Instagram or talking on podcasts or talking to other moms, I don't use the term self-care because I've never viewed it that way. I've always, I view it as prioritizing myself, and that's kind of how I put it out there. And I do a lot for myself. Even when my children are young, I had no problem going to my basement where we had a treadmill and a few weights, working out. I've been working out consistently since I was 22 years old. That's just a part of who I was. I worked out 9 months pregnant, and it really wasn't a big deal for me because I've never stopped, right? Like it was just part of the weekly routine. I had no problem taking my newborn in a car seat down to my basement, putting them on the rug with a pacifier while I went on the treadmill. I let out a few cries. I put the pacifier back in. Like when they were older, a little older, and then they're going to be in the car seat, I had no problem, at some point when they were old enough, giving them some sort of technology or putting on a TV show while I was on that treadmill. I'm just using working out as an example, but I have always just prioritized myself. And I do a lot, what feels good for me. There's so many elements to it. So, it's consistent movement for me, always has been, even pre-children. It's lifestyle, it's habits, it's rituals, it's date night when I've always liked going out, especially I've been with my husband since 22 years old, and that's always been something between us. We like to go out for dinner. The two of us, we always dated that. When we had children, I looked at him and said, okay, like Saturday night's our night. Like that can't end because that's part of who I am. I like to dress up. We continued that. Like all of the things that are important to me, I've integrated new things. I'm regularly steam Fridays after my workout. And when someone asks me for coffee, it's kind of usually a no because I'm going to work out, I'm going to steam. I always have put myself first without any guilt, without even really thinking about it. This is just like a funny tidbit, and I've written about this on blogs for people and on my Instagram. There was a point when my children were young, like in their toddler years, where they were kind of in preschool, half days, that type of thing, where I did think to myself a lot, wow, I think I'm a selfish mother. That's what I used to think. I used to look at other moms in play groups and at, kitty gym, and I just could see the difference in terms, or even in our discussions, right, about how they felt broken down, how they felt not themselves, how they felt like outer body experience, like they don't know who they are. And I knew in my mind, and I would never talk about it, I would think to myself, I am a selfish mother because I don't feel this way. I have never felt this way pre-kids, with kids, and it's because I'm selfish. And maybe I'm just, and I used to, I guess the one thing I did at that time say to myself sometimes was, okay, my gosh, like I'm a selfish person. Like I didn't really know it so much, but like now I'm realizing I am a selfish person. And it wasn't even like selfish mom. It was actually selfish person because it also involved my husband. Like I had no problem putting things on him or asking him to do things or asking my mother-in-law to do things. I was like, I'm selfish. And then it was when kind of self-care, that term became really trending and all of a sudden became marketable. And all of a sudden you would see that term self-care everywhere, which was a few years ago. And, it still is. But when that term first came out, it was a really, marketable term. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, I'm not selfish. It's just that I'm not selfless. And
You're just ahead of the curve.
I mean, it was just, I think it's just something always, it's something, it's the way I was before having children. And I think I like in a lot of deep thought and reflection on this, I think that's why that's why it transitioned into motherhood, because it was already a part of me. But I was able to change that narrative on myself that, okay, no. I'm not a selfish person. I'm just not selfless. I'm not a martyr. And in my household, I talk about that actually a lot. The word martyr comes up with my husband. Like, I am not a martyr. If I offer to do something, I'm offering to do it. And if I'm quiet about it, like I don't play the role of I take something on and then I complain about it, because I just don't take it on or offer in the first place.
I love this. So I ask everyone to fill in like a form and help with scheduling and all of that stuff for the podcast. And I remember when you sent that in and you wrote about that in there, and I was like, oh, I want to talk to her because I want to talk about this, because I love it, by the way. And I love it because it's this idea of like knowing exactly who you are and like having your feet firmly planted on the ground as like, I am a whole person. This is what I need to do in order to take care of myself so that I can do the best that I can as a mom, as a partner, as a person, as a business owner, as all of those roles, right? But then you also have this like idea of, because I mean, if you have young children and you go to a play group, it's like this weird comparison, but it's like a silent comparison kind of thing. Like, there's always like, there's different variations of it, but there is this idea of like, if I'm not doing things the way that they're doing it, am I doing it wrong? But you being able to be like, no, this is what is going to work. And this is what is healthy and helpful for me. Because really, in all honesty, you're meeting all your needs. You're meeting the needs of your kids and all of those things. It just looks different than everybody else. And that's
Absolutely.
the hard road. It's the hard road for people to say like, oh, well, that looks different, so that must be wrong. And we're all doing this thing, so we must be right.
Absolutely. And you're right. There is kind of this secret comparison 100%. And even I'm going to give like two very real, very recent examples. There's also this kind of idea that it's this comparison, but also that I'm doing something, so you should be doing something, or having confidence in not doing something. And two examples of this are someone was recently talking to me about gardening. Now, I love beautiful flowers all around my house. I do. And thankfully, we have someone who helps plant these flowers every spring. And I have an interest in the aesthetic because I'm very visual and creative and I love beautiful things all around my life. But I have zero interest in gardening. Like the thought of being on my hands and knees and being in the dirt, and it is not peaceful to me, but I totally get how that would be very cathartic and peaceful for someone else and meditative. But for me, it's not. So I'm talking to this mom about gardening and I'm like, oh, like I have a green thumb, like I'm like the worst. And she took it as like, oh, like don't say that about yourself. Like, like I can help you, like in the nicest, sweetest of ways. I can help you and I'm sure you're not the worst. And I looked at her because I'm confident enough to say this. And I was like, oh, no, no. I'm not saying I couldn't learn. I mean, I'm bright. I'm sure I can learn to garden. I have zero interest in learning to garden. And that's where I'm coming from. And the same thing happened recently with cooking. Now I do cook. I cook, meals for my family, home cooked meals from scratch, Monday through Thursday. That I was written up in the Wall Street Journal. I do meal planning on a whiteboard. It's up for my whole family. But I cook because I constantly about healthy living and it 360-degree approach. And part of that is cooking healthy for my family. I don't cook because I have a passion for cooking. So I was talking to another mom who's Italian and this is just yesterday. And she was telling me how all the friends come over and she has all these home cooked meals right when they come over from school and how all the kids love her. And by the way, that really is the way to your kid's friend's heart. I'm not going to lie. So she's got something there and that is the way.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is amazing. I was like, it's a little bit slim pickings because I'm like cooking up the dinner and like, I feel like I don't have the gourmet, like I'm not cooking fresh pastas in the machine. And we got into a similar type conversation where she was like talking about making the fresh pasta in the machine for the friends. And I was like, oh my gosh, oh boy. I was like, I can cook and I can cook healthy. I was like, but again, she was like, oh, it's okay. Like, I'm sure that they still, like you. And I was like, oh, I'm sure they like me too. So
I was solid in that.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I just don't want to make fresh pasta in the machine. I was like, and by the way, I was like, I eat a lot of zoodles. And so like we got into this whole funny conversation. I was like, I'll make the zoodles. So it was just, I think at the end of the day, it really is about knowing who you are. And if you don't know who you are, taking a lot of time to figure that out and then standing strong in that. And by the way, you can change. Moms can change. People can change. Yeah. So you don't ever have to be set in who you are. We grow, we learn, we change 100% through different chapters of our lives. But at the end of the day, it is important to know who your inner soul is, what your priorities are, and then standing firm in that with confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My story along those lines is everything to do with summer camp sign up. In where I live, it's not like, I mean, I don't live in like a very rural area, but there's not as many camps as there are children. And so it's this crazy like Hunger Games type deal of like trying to sign up for camp and trying to sign up for like spots in gymnastics and all this stuff. Like it's just insane. And when my oldest got into this age where we were like entering the gauntlet of like camp sign up and it became this like super competitive thing, I remember being like, literally no, I just like I'm out on this. And so like, we did one camp but not all the camps. And then there's like the camp that's like the hot one to go to, or the camps that like everyone's trying to get into and all of that stuff. It's just this very weird keeping up kind of situation. And so, yeah, me, I feel you on the, like, I don't think that we need to do all of these things just for the purpose of doing all of these things to like be in the right space at the right time.
Absolutely. 100%.
It's nuts. It's totally nuts. There's so, like, I feel like anywhere you turn when it comes to parenting, and a lot of it, I think, falls in motherhood because of, predominantly scheduling and planning and things like that, is like anything can become competitive. And sometimes I'm like, I'm out. Like, I just don't want to play this game.
100%. And something I just wanted to add was, if you've read, or anyone listening, Untamed by Glennon Doyle, there was a few lines in there, but there was one line, and this is not a direct quote because I don't have the book in front of me, but I'm paraphrasing. She wrote something that has, and I read it years ago when it first came out. She wrote something that has stuck with me so much. I talk about it a lot. I write about it a lot. She spoke about moms being martyrs. And I have a daughter, and she basically wrote so eloquently that if you are a mom and you take on the martyr role, like, me, always doing everything, never have time for myself, and you take on that role, and that is what you model in front of your daughter on the daily, the martyr role, you are setting your daughter up to think that that's what motherhood has to look like. And she will fall into that. She will fall into that because all she will have seen for the whole duration of time that she has lived with you, and then even after that, because it doesn't stop, is the woe be me, poor me, I'm the only one doing everything, I have no time for myself, oh, I'm the martyr here. And is that what you want? Forget about yourself. Is that what you want her to think motherhood looks like? So that is very powerful. It really resonated with me. And I think it's just something really important to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. I think definitely, there's always that idea of like, before you become a parent, it's like, right, everyone's the perfect parent before they have children.
Yeah.
Right. It's like that, like, my kids will never do this, or my kids will eat everything that I make for them, or, whatever. And I think that idea of like what you envision motherhood to be, and what you envision that experience going into it, may not be what actually ends up coming out of it. And at the end of the day, how can you make it so that it is true to you, and it is the example that you want to bestow, while combining all the other outside factors, right? Like the pressure from other people, and the limitations or the strengths that you have in a social support network, or financially, or community, or whatever. It's how do you sort of integrate all that in a way that at the end of it, when you're not outside of parenting, but when your kids are grown and flown, that you feel like you didn't get washed away, or you didn't get sort of swallowed up by this whole thing. They have an example to go forward on, that is keeping themselves on the table, or on the menu, or they are a player in the team instead of just the team manager. And how does that all make sense, so that everything gets done, but everything is also healthy for everybody that has to get the things done?
100%.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. It is a crazy jumble of things to try and like take the outside and the inside and the stuff around you. And, it's like social media and the news, and just there's so much bandwidth that goes into filtering everything that's coming in.
So much. So much.
So much. And so there was a question I was going to ask you, and I hope I didn't lose it. When you are, so the head of community piece, I love this. And I love the situation that people sort of come into when they become a member of this. And the idea that motherhood is a really big part of this, versus like business first, motherhood second. that these things happen together. And so if there are people who are listening who are like, I would like to check this out, or I would like to hear more about it, not necessarily ready to join, but how do they sort of start getting involved in that? Who do they reach out to? Because I'm guessing it's you.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you for bringing this up. I probably would have forgotten to talk about this. If anyone is listening and is curious about Hey Mama, your first line of defense, or first two, I should say, is go to heymama.co, not com, heymama.co. Just check it out, right? See what the website is. We're at Hey Mama Co on Instagram. My personal email is Penny, Penny, at heymama.co, again, not com. Email me. And basically, if you're more interested after you've poked around the Instagram, after you've poked around the website, I would love to invite anyone listening here to our 30-minute information session. We run it once a month. I think the next one is March 21st. Don't quote me, but I think that's what it is. So you can also RSVP directly from the website. So join the information session. It's 30 minutes. You can even be in your pajamas and just listening to the audio and just hear it out and see how it can help you. And of course, if anyone really wants to join right away and is on the website and like, I'm ready to join, then here's special friends and family code. Use code Penny100 with my personal code, and it will be $100 off an annual membership. So I would love to connect with anyone who wants to talk more about Hey Mama.
That's awesome. Yeah. And there's annual and monthly memberships, right? So if people are like, I want to try it, but I don't know that I can commit to a whole year right now.
So technically it's a year membership, but it's a monthly payment plan.
Gotcha. Okay. There's so many of these things that go on that I've been doing a lot of business stuff, and it's like, this is monthly and this is annual and all of that stuff. So I just want to make sure that we put out there what the setup is. So I really appreciate you coming on today, and I really appreciate the authenticity in the I live my life this way and I want to carry it on this way, despite, people sort of wanting to push all the walls in and say, no, you have to stay home and do all of this. And if you do this, you're doing it wrong and all of that stuff. So I welcome and applaud people that are sharing that kind of voice and perspective, because I do think that is more common than not. And that it is that idea, like you even said, I felt like I couldn't say anything when people are standing there talking about all of the things that they need to do. And you're thinking I'm not going to do any of that, or that's not my experience, or whatever it is. So I think that there are more people out there that feel that way, that are just doing that instead of speaking up. So thank you for coming on and sharing your perspective and sharing that aspect.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. I'm excited to hear the episodes, spray it out, get more mamas talking about it, let our Hey Mama community know about it for sure. And I really appreciate the opportunity.
That's awesome. And I will put all of the links and the code in the show notes, just so if people are driving or whatever and they don't have a spot to write it down, I'll get all the contact information in there, so you'll be able to find it and get it from there.
Perfect. Thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks.